You are looking live this morning at Space Launch Complex 40 on a very cloudy, windy day. Good morning. It is Thursday, March 19th, as SpaceX is hoping to launch this Falcon 9 rocket at the heart of Pad 40, sending 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites into low Earth orbit. You're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of this mission, dubbed Starlink 10-33. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. It's good to be with you here on this otherwise very much not a Chamber of Commerce kind of a day. We'll take a wide look out and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. As we're broadcasting here from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, we're watching quite a bit of cloud activity streaming across the spaceport as SpaceX is aiming currently for a launch near the end of its 4-hour window today. T0 at the moment set for 10:20 and 10 seconds this morning, a.m. Eastern. It's 15:20 and 10 seconds a.m. UTC for those joining around the world. Hope you've all had a wonderful work week, school week, vacation week if it is your spring break. We appreciate you stopping by and spending a little time with us here as, again, SpaceX is hoping to send up its Falcon 9 rocket in just under 58 minutes' time. See, we've got a little more than 850 of you watching live with us at the moment. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream. That'll allow some more folks to find their way into our live launch coverage. John Pisani is running the technical operations of our broadcast today alongside Spaceflight Now editor Stephen Young. We've got Adam Bernstein out in the field, making sure all of our cameras are properly set and ready to capture the Falcon 9 if it is, in fact, able to fly today. If you're not following the team on X, you can find them at their handles here. Adam is at ABurnNYC. John is at John Pisani Photo. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. While you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now, simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook for those of you who are not on X. We should be joined in a little bit in our coverage by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. That is, of course, weather permitting. Before we get too much further into the weather, though, do want to acknowledge a couple more folks supporting our launch coverage today. Thanks to one of our moderators, Aussie Space Girl, for being with us this morning. You can help her and our other mods by following our live chat rules. We ask that you please post your message in English so that the mods can respond as appropriate. Also, of course, there's, as always, lots happening in the world in geopolitics, but we ask that you please steer clear of overtly political or religious comments in the live chat, and please don't post in all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We would just ask that you don't create a huge block of them so it takes up a large chunk of the live chat space. And last but certainly not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated, and we'll all get along swimmingly. We're also joined by one of our channel members, Cumulus Granatus, who's able to help answer folks' questions in the chat. Speaking of channel members, this and every other live launch opportunity is made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful channel member community here on YouTube. So big thanks to folks like Space Coast Rocket Launches Florida, Arlene Pryor, Mark P. Let's see what else we've got here this morning. Perhaps a slow start on the member front, but of course, we've got lots of folks in the member community who may be popping in and out as their morning allows, and we appreciate each and every one of them for their ongoing support. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Last little bit of housekeeping here. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings-on in the realm of space or spaceflight, you can always use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, assuming, of course, that your comment or question is appropriate to be read as part of the broadcast, we'd love to make you part of the show today. And if you are not watching live but would still like to help support our independent journalism here at Spaceflight Now, you can go anytime to our website, spaceflightnow.com/donate. Or if you're not watching this on your mobile device, you can scan the QR code that will be popping up here momentarily. There we go. And that'll take you directly to that page where we've got a little description section illustrating how we help use your contributions to make our coverage even more robust. As we're trying to make improvements to both our hardware and software, as well as typical mundane things that are increasingly becoming more expensive given the state of the world right now, like data storage. Hard drives are harder to come by, and so we certainly appreciate your help in making sure we can preserve all of these launches as well as the rest of our news reporting archive. So thank you to all of you who are able to support us here at Spaceflight Now, and sincerely, even if it's not monetary, thank you for just being here. Currently T-minus 51 minutes, 25 seconds and counting to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. The Falcon 9 first stage booster that is supporting today's mission has the distinction of being among the most flown of SpaceX's boosters, part of what we dub our Falcon 9 frequent flyers list. Here's a look at the list as it currently stands before the launch today. The booster on tap is B-1077, making its 27th trip to space and back, coming up in just about 50.5 minutes. It will target only... It will be making a landing on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions about 8.5 minutes after liftoff as planned. Popping on over to Chuck and Jen's view on Merritt Island. It's, again, cloudy from all directions. Tricky to get the lighting just right, so that's why it looks a little bit brighter there in that vantage point, just because of how they're angled against the Falcon 9 rocket compared to us here at the press site. As you can hear with the wind cutting across our mics, it is quite a blustery day here on Florida's Space Coast. Let's take a spin back and talk about the weather with a little bit more detail as we're getting to the final, well, we're within now 49 minutes before liftoff. Heading into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron forecast a sliding scale weather outlook for today's window. Here's the most recent weather loop from NOAA's Goes East satellite. Meteorologists forecast a 75% chance for favorable weather at the opening of the window today. That drops down to 60% favorability at the back end, with concerns presented for the cumulus cloud and thick cloud layers rule. Also, the booster recovery weather is forecast to fall within the low to moderate risk, highlighted as a watch item in this forecast, and that's on a scale of low to moderate to high. So a number of things that the launch weather officers are keeping a close eye out for as the window continues today. Take a wide look out back over the turn base and give you a broader view of the clouds that are streaming across Florida's Space Coast as we speak. If SpaceX is unable to launch today, they do have a backup opportunity tomorrow. And that would show a liftoff with conditions 90% favorable for flight, removing the thick cloud layers rule as a possible interference tomorrow, but preserving that low to moderate risk posture for the booster recovery zone. Liftoff winds today as well, just picking up on the wind noise that you're hearing. You can see with the brushes and the American flag on the right-hand side of your screen. Meteorologists forecast liftoff winds to be between 20 to 25 miles per hour with gusts up to 28. Winds calm down just a little bit in tomorrow's outlook, ranging between 17 to 23 miles per hour. Just about 45 minutes remaining on the clock. Coming up tonight as currently scheduled, beginning at about 8 p.m. Eastern, will be the emergence of NASA's Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft from the Vehicle Assembly Building. It will be making a 12-hour-long 4-mile journey back out to Launch Complex 39B. The plan is to begin operations in work for a launch no earlier than April 1st. April 1st, though, is not the official target launch date necessarily. That is just the earliest possible opportunity for NASA within the early April window. once the rocket is out of the pad, they'll have a better understanding of what the possibility of launching on the first will be. Of course, we'll have live rollout coverage tonight, beginning a little bit ahead of the rocket's emergence from High Bay 3. So as we're looking at the building here, High Bay 3 is the tall door that is the furthest from us on as we're facing the front of the VAB on the right. Teams will monitor the rollout progress both on the ground inside the VAB as well as in the white building that juts out towards our camera's perspective here. That is the Launch Control Center, or the LCC. Artemis Launch Director Charlie Blackwell Thompson will be in the LCC to monitor tonight's rollout. At least that's what we are anticipating. And again, this will take roughly 12 hours from first motion in the vehicle assembly building to the hard down out at the pad. Some of the reason why this process takes so long is because when they are first emerging from the VAB, they have to very slowly and carefully lift the rocket on the mobile launch platform up and over the pedestals, and then they will lower it again as the crawler transporter brings it just outside of the building. They'll do some checkouts, and then they'll do the crew access arm swing. So the arm will retract and stay in that stowed position for the rest of the roll. Crawler Transporter 2 is the largest self-propelling vehicle in the entire world, and as such, it is not a speedy beast. It has a top speed of about 1 mile per hour. But of course, to make sure that there is as little wobble as possible for the rocket, they do travel usually under that top speed, especially once they get to areas where the road or the crawlerway makes some notable curves, like near the split off towards Launch Complex 39A to Launch Complex 39B. That's one of those big bends by the gantry. So, slow going. And again, we'll have coverage on a dedicated stream beginning tonight, a little bit ahead of rollout. So we hope that you are able to join us back here then. Meantime, visibility has started to deteriorate for our Falcon 9 rocket launch today. Still somewhat of a decent view from Chuck and Jen's perspective on Merritt Island, which is why we don't keep all of our visual eggs in one basket, to give the best possible opportunity for being able to see the Falcon 9 rocket. Looking back, this is our perspective from the press site. So rocket disappearing a little bit from this vantage point for the time being. Time now T minus 39 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. We are coming up to the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load for today's mission. As we're waiting for the start of fueling, let's go ahead and talk about the countdown timeline, let you know what to expect ahead of a good liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. A call for prop load, generally speaking, happens at the T-minus 38-minute mark, with fueling beginning at T-minus 35 minutes. SpaceX will load a liquid oxygen on board the rocket's first stage, as well as RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. T-minus 30 minutes is when they start to load cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage, and they'll do the same on the second stage a few minutes after that. Helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. T-minus 23 minutes is when second stage RP-1 loading wraps up. Then at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when we'll see the strong back chill down. At this point in the count, SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen aboard the rocket's upper stage. We'll see this visually as the so-called big vent beginning at T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. That vent lasting a little less than 4 minutes in duration, and setting things up for the liquid oxygen to flow on the rocket's upper stage at T-minus 16 minutes. 7 minutes out, or just about 30 minutes time from now, is when the engine chill will begin. SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, and that helps to protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. A minute after that, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it will stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out is when the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. Same will be true on the second stage about a minute after that. At this point, the Falcon 9 rocket will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is entered into its automated startup, control of the countdown will be handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks will be brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will then give their final go for launch determination at T-minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be granted at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting that departure time at 10:20 and 10 seconds AM Eastern, 15:20 and 10 seconds UTC, or just about 35.5 minutes from now. As we are just under 35 minutes now in the count. At this point, we expect that SpaceX is loading liquid oxygen and RP-1 on board the rocket. Go ahead and punch in at the base of the vehicle, give you a better view for watching for. Just above the tree line, we should start to see a frost line form as the super cold, densified liquid oxygen begins to flow on board the rocket's booster. We can usually spot evidence of that within a couple minutes, maybe up to a few minutes worth of fueling time. Thankfully, this morning we're not seeing quite as much heat distortion as we do at other times, so being able to discern the frost line should be a little bit easier. Of course, there's also the wind shake to account for, but without it combining with the heat distortion, it's, again, should be a little simpler to discern. And we are starting to see that frost line form, which is a good visual indication that SpaceX is in fact fueling its Falcon 9 rocket there at pad 40 and will press ahead towards a launch attempt at least at 10:20, 10 seconds a.m. Eastern. Time now T minus 29 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. If you're just joining us, you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 10-33 mission set to depart from Space Launch Complex 40 on a northeasterly trajectory once the rocket is able to leave the pad. Challenging weather conditions persist across the Florida spaceport. So teams, of course, keeping a close eye on the weather. But given that SpaceX is now fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, that does lock them into their current T0 time of 10:20 a.m. Eastern. (1420 UTC). Time now, T-minus 27 minutes, 21 seconds, and counting. Today's payload flying to low Earth orbit is a batch of 29 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites, adding to SpaceX's constellation of now more than 10,000 in low Earth orbit. This batch of 29 is coincidentally the 29th Starlink mission so far this year. SpaceX has been launching the V2 mini optimized satellites now for a little while. These are the lighter versions of the previous V2 minis, with a mass comparison of 575 kilograms versus their predecessors, clocking in at about 800 kilograms. Built in the facilities you're seeing here on your screen in Redmond, Washington, with their solar panels fully extended, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet tip to tip, or 30 meters. These particular spacecraft maneuver using argon Hall effect thrusters. Today's satellites will be deployed at about 165 miles or 266 kilometers in altitude at a 53-degree inclination. SpaceX at this point in time says that they have more than 10 million customers using their Starlink internet service around the world. And in fact, just within the last few days, few new countries have been added to the coverage outlook. Those include, apologies for probably mispronouncing this, NEU, as well as Kuwait and the Central African Republic. We're coming up on the big vent here in the next few minutes, which will be our good visual indication of chill down of the feed lines as SpaceX prepares to load liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. Before that, though, take a minute to talk about the booster history for the Falcon 9 first stage that is flying today. The booster number is 1077 in the SpaceX fleet. It began its flight history back on October 5th of 2022 when it launched the Crew 5 mission to the International Space Station. This mission notable for having the first Russian cosmonaut to fly on a Dragon spacecraft, Anna Kikina, who is currently preparing for her return to the International Space Station. Will be flying alongside NASA astronaut Anil Menon. Next for this booster was a GPS satellite, GPS Space Vehicle number 6, launching on January 18th, 2023, followed up by the Inmarsat 6F mission in February, a month later. The first Starlink flight for this booster came on March 29th. That was Starlink 5-10. Another Dragon mission after that, the 28th Commercial Resupply Services mission for SpaceX. That was followed up by the Galaxy 37 mission for Intelsat on August 3rd. And we had a series of 3 Starlink missions that followed by another trip to the International Space Station, a Cygnus spacecraft this time, launching on January 30th of 2024. There was a run of Starlink missions at that point until we get to the Optus X or TD7 flight on November 17th of 2024. Turning the page, then we are back to Starlink land for the duration of this booster's flight history. Most recently seeing the launch of Starlink 10-36 less than a month ago on February 20th. Here we are, just about 27 days later. Getting ready to see the flight of this booster once again, this time in support of the Starlink 10-33 mission. As we're coming up to the start of the big vent, let us know where you're watching from this morning. See, we've got TWSSR joining us from Seadrift, Texas. Vincent King checking in from Owego, New York. Let us know where you're watching from, whether you're here with us in Florida or further flung around the United States or around the globe. And there's the start of the big vent right on cue. Good visual indication that the clock is as we were expecting, continuing to target a liftoff here this morning at 10:20 and 10 seconds a.m. Eastern, 14:20 and 10 seconds UTC. taking a look back at our live chat here. I want to thank moderator Mark Otto for joining us today. Appreciate you stopping by, Mark. Good to see you. Also, thanks to the more than 2,100 of you who are watching along with us live. Got just about a minute's time remaining on the big vent before that wraps up, and the stage is set for second stage liquid oxygen load. Want to thank K2 Hat for a $2 super chat, saying thanks for the coverage from Miko, Florida. Also want to welcome a new channel member, Brownie Clark 2581, joining us with membership at the Pad Leader level. Welcome aboard, Brownie. We're glad to have you with us. Just under 16 minutes on the clock now. At this point, SpaceX is loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. Time now, T-minus 14 minutes, 46 seconds and counting. As we are continuing to watch the tanking for the Falcon 9 rocket, we are also keeping our eyes on a storm cell that is making its way pretty much directly towards the Cape here this morning. Assuming that the particular radar that I'm looking at right now is accurate for timing, the storm cell shouldn't be on top of the launch pad at liftoff, but it will be pretty close to the vicinity. Unclear if this storm contains lightning as well. That would obviously be an important factor for consideration as meteorologists are determining whether a launch today at 10:20 a.m. and 10 seconds will be safe for the flight vehicle, the payload, and the public. You're seeing that radar data here, and that's that storm cell I was just mentioning. I will give the continuous caveat that while I've worn many hats in my broadcast career, being a certified meteorologist is unfortunately not one of them, so my level of detail that I'm feel comfortable and confident going into with you all is finite, and I want to be extremely upfront about my particular limitations where this is concerned. But where you see those tiny little pockets of red from watching and learning from actual meteorologists should be the stronger portions of the storm. So those will still remain, by the look of it, offshore during liftoff as it's currently planned. But again, the proximity to the pad is the deciding factor. If in fact there is lightning within that storm cell, it might bring it just close enough that it would make a launch today not happen. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, they've still got about 12 minutes left to make that determination. Likely, given the fact that they are fueling the Falcon 9 rocket right now, SpaceX will more than likely take this down to within the final minute of the count, go through the automated startup sequence, and if the launch director has made a call or will be making a call that a launch today is just not in the cards, we probably then would not hear the launch director say we are go for launch. That point at T-minus 45 seconds would come and go, and we would hear another member of their mission control team call for hold, hold, hold. And we would hopefully hear that it's due to weather, but we'll see. Again, not a meteorologist, not a member of the flight team. SpaceX has an abundance of data about their rocket and what it is able to handle. So they're making those calculations and assessments as we speak, and will continue to take the remaining time left in the count to make a determination if one has not already been made and just not shared publicly. And we are getting views now of the Falcon 9 rocket at the pad, as well as pad level audio. Time now just under 7 minutes remaining in the count as SpaceX is preparing to launch its Falcon 9 rocket. At this point, the engine chill sequence is underway. SpaceX flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps to protect the engines from thermal shock and damage during startup. Let's go ahead and talk about where the Falcon 9 will be flying once it leaves the pad. Talking a little trajectory here. Falcon 9 rocket will lift off from Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, weather permitting. Rocket set to fly in on a northeasterly trajectory, heading away from Florida's Space Coast. First stage booster targeting a touchdown on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. Again, this booster for SpaceX is flying for a 27th time today as SpaceX is working to certify its boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. In addition to the booster reuse, SpaceX also wants to recover the payload fairings and reuse them as they're working to certify those for up to 40 flights as well. Once down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, the fairings will be brought aboard a recovery vessel like the one you see here on your screen, then brought through Port Canaveral onto the Hangar X site where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Just about 5 minutes remaining on the clock. At this point, SpaceX should have completed RP-1 load on the rocket's first stage. Coming up to the start of the strong back retract sequence, which, given the rain that appears to be pushing in towards the Space Coast now, obscuring our view of the Falcon 9 rocket from the from the press site, we will be likely relying on the SpaceX pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket, and hopefully they've got a better view than us. We'll see here in just a moment.
Strong back retract has started.
Just about 3.5 minutes remaining on the clock now. In less than 30 seconds time, we should hear a call that the Falcon 9's first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, we are awaiting a similar call out regarding second stage liquid oxygen load. That should happen at around the T-minus 2 minute mark. Seeing a few raindrops scattered here on this camera view. Coming into the final 2 minutes of the count.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Momentarily, actually right now, you're starting to see the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
This is SpaceX releasing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. Coming up to the final minute in the automated startup sequence.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we are waiting for the SpaceX launch director to confirm if they are in fact go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
How about that? Coming up on the final 30 seconds before liftoff.
30.
15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-33 mission. Beating the weather odds, the Falcon 9 rocket has cleared the tower. Falcon 9 rocket passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Now about a minute and a half into flight. Coming up on MVAC chill, the thermal conditioning of the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's upper stage.
Stage 2 engine chill.
There you go. Nearing 2 minutes into flight, SpaceX is coming up to a few events in rapid succession with a good confirmation of a nominal trajectory so far. First, we'll see first stage main engine cutoff or MECO at about T plus 2 minutes 25 seconds. That'll be followed shortly by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairings will jettison at around the 3-minute mark in flight.
MECO. Stage 2 startup.
Stage separation confirmed.
There you see the hypersonic grid fins extending. Fairing jettison coming up next. See payload fairing jettison has occurred. Little more than 4 minutes into the flight so far. Coming up now in less than 2 minutes time will be the start of the 3-engine entry burn, helping to slow the booster down as it makes its way towards the drone ship. Topping out at about 113 kilometers in altitude by the look of it this morning. Now starting to make its descent. Look up through the interstage there on the left-hand side of your screen. Less than 1 minute remaining to the start of the entry burn. Those puffs that you're seeing between the hypersonic grid fins are the cold gas thrusters, which help the booster maintain the correct attitude or positioning as it targets the start of the entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry shutdown.
And with the conclusion of the entry burn, now
Looking at
Booster
two nominal trajectories.
traveling much slower, but as you just heard, both the booster and the upper stage still following a nominal trajectory path. Coming up next will be the single engine landing burn, coming up just before the T+8 minute mark in this flight.
Stage 1 transonic.
Less than 20 seconds or so remaining to the start of the landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing light deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good recovery for the 27th time for booster 1077.
Stage 2 shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with a good orbit achieved, the upper stage will now coast in this parking orbit until T plus 52 minutes 10 seconds time. There will be a 1 second burn to circularize its orbit, and the Starlink satellites will be deployed at T plus 1 hour,
Stage 2
1 minute,
FTS is saved.
and 31 seconds. Wrapping things up with a confirmation that the flight termination system has been safed on the upper stage. No longer needed at this point in the flight. We've got our launch replays ready for you. Quick roundup from our various camera views of the launch. Start things with the fixed site view from Adam Bernstein. Moving on to the wide view next. Onto the turn basin next. Moving on to the tracker from Chuck and Jen Briggs. That was mostly for the laughs there. You could barely see the glow, unfortunately. And we'll wrap things up with Adam's tracker here at the press site. And a brief roundup of launch replays today, given the overwhelming presence of cloud this morning. But a good roundup, nevertheless, I would say. Let's go ahead and turn now to our mission stats as they currently stand. This was the 27th good landing of Booster 1077 in the SpaceX fleet. It marked SpaceX's 617th Falcon 9 rocket launch to date and the 35th of the year so far. This was the company's 551st Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 168th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 317th orbital launch for SpaceX from Pad 40, and the 372nd overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Moving on to the bar chart version of the slides, and apologies for the typo there. Obviously, it's March 19th, not a mythical 199th day of March. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 151st good landing of the drone ship. Just read the instructions. That marked SpaceX's 485th drone ship landing and the 588th booster landing for the company to date. Also, 589th overall landing of an orbital class rocket. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 20th launch from the Sunshine State of Florida, the 37th orbital launch from U.S. soil, the 40th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 59th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 4 orbital failures so far this year. Here's a look at the bar chart from the Cape, and here's where our pie chart now currently stands. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for our live coverage of the Starlink 10-33 mission. Do you want to thank a couple more folks from the chat before we wrap things up, though? Glenn Ashworth, one of our channel members, with a $2 super chat. Thank you, Glenn. Also, thanks to channel member Chuck Close, checking in from Ormond Beach, Florida, with a $25 super chat. Really appreciate the support, Chuck. Thanks for being with us as always. And a $10 super chat from channel member and friend of the channel, Charles Boyer, with Talk of Titusville. Saying thanks to Cumulus Granadas for the info and for keeping the chat in line. You're appreciated. And our thanks as well to Cumulus for the factoids and for helping to answer folks' questions in the chat. Thanks to Aussie Space Girl and to Mark Otto for running the live chat from a moderator function. Also appreciate P. Carstens with Max Q Productions for being with us in the hopes of catching the Falcon 9, and for Chuck and Jen Briggs for giving it the old college try and just getting snuffed there at the buzzer. Big thanks to our photography team, of course, of John and Adam for getting everything visually arranged this morning at the press site, and to John and Stephen for running the technical operations of the broadcast today. Most importantly, though, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We certainly appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you're able to join us back here when next we have a launch to cover. But before our next launch coverage, we do have more rocket activity that is on tap for today. Not so much heading vertically, but a horizontal jaunt for the Space Launch System rocket, getting ready to emerge from the vehicle assembly building you're seeing live here on the screen. Rollout is expected to begin at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, with first motion inside the VAB. It'll take roughly 12 hours in total for the rocket to make its way from here at the VAB out to the pad at Launch Complex 39, here from the VAB to Launch Complex 39B. So we hope you're able to join us for our coverage tonight, starting a little bit ahead of first motion. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks, and until then, bye-bye.